Welcome to the channel, and today we'll be talking about music album sales based on equivalent sales worldwide from major music industry associations for the month of December 2018. Today we'll be listing the best-selling albums worldwide based on equivalent album sales from music industry associations around the world compiled by Media Traffic. And if you don't understand what we mean by equivalent sales and how it's different from actual sales, check out our video that broke this down at the link that pops up at the top right corner now. To put it simply, equivalent sales represents a combination of actual sales, digital song downloads, and music streams. So in a way, it's just a popularity index across all formats, and shouldn't be confused with actual sales that involves consumers paying cash to own a copy of an album or song. We'll start by listing the top 10 best-selling albums across all genres of music, then focus on Eminem's Kamikaze performance, and at the end, list additional sales info for albums that didn't make the top 10 to give you an idea of how these albums performed in December despite missing the top 10. As always, before we get started, remember to subscribe if you're new to the channel and turn on notifications. Skins by XXXTENTACION released in December 2018 and is the rapper's first album to release after his death. The lead single of the album Bad released in November, but the album was met by unfavorable critical reception. Nonetheless, the album opened with worldwide first week sales of 182,000 equivalent album units sold according to Media Traffic and ended the month selling 294,000 equivalent album units globally. Pop Virus by Japanese artist Gen HOSHINO released on the 19th of December and opened with first week global sales of 304,000 equivalent album units sold. With only 1 week of sales tracking in December, Pop Virus made the top 10 with 304,000 equivalent album units sold and at the moment has been certified 2 times platinum by the RIAJ. Mon Pays C'est l'Amour by French music legend Johnny Hallyday released posthumously and had one of the largest first week sales of 2018 across all genres of music in the world with global first week sales of 805,000 equivalent album units sold. That topped all but one hip-hop album in 2018. The album has been certified 2 times diamond in France and platinum in Belgium, and in December sold 340,000 equivalent album units globally. Don't Mess Up My Tempo by EXO was the top-selling album globally based on equivalent sales worldwide in November 2018 with sales of 1,183,000 units sold in November. The album still had a lot of momentum in December and sold an additional 476,000 equivalent album units globally. Overall, since its release, it has also been the top-selling album based on equivalent sales for a total of 5 weeks. For reference, Drake's Scorpion was also the top album in the world by equivalent sales for 5 weeks too. The overall best-selling album of 2018 based on pure sales and also based on equivalent sales, the soundtrack album For the Greatest Showman, also made its mark in December to end the year in style. The soundtrack album sold an additional 496,000 equivalent album units globally in December and ended 2018 with global sales of 5,434,000 equivalent album units sold. Love by BUBLE released in November 2018 and was also one of the best-selling albums of that month with global sales of 367,000 equivalent album units sold. In December, the album saw sales increase partly due to it now having full 4 weeks of sales tracking and also an increase in sales momentum and sold an additional 511,000 equivalent albums in December. This doesn't happen often, but BUBLE also has a classic Christmas album and just happened to release his latest album Love late in the year too, so of course this was bound to happen. Christmas by BUBLE saw sales pick up because of the season, and this older album actually outsold Love in December with sales of 565,000 equivalent album units sold globally, and BUBLE takes 2 spots on December's top 10 albums globally. In addition, Christmas has now sold over 12.5 million equivalent album units globally and would most likely add another 500,000 come 2019 Christmas period. Meek Mill's Championship released late November and charted in December with first week sales of 266,000 equivalent album units sold globally. 229,000 of this figure came from the United States alone, and the album peaked at #1 in the United States. Globally, the album had the luxury of full 4 weeks of sales tracking in December and sold 572,000 equivalent album units globally. The soundtrack album for Bohemian Rhapsody started out slowly but has now gained strong sales momentum around the world, and even in Japan is still a top 5 on the weekly sales chart at the moment. The soundtrack in its first week sold less than 70,000 equivalent album units worldwide, but sales only grew from there, and in December, the album sold 659,000 equivalent albums worldwide and ended 2018 with sales of 1,329,000 equivalent albums sold. Not bad for an album that opened with less than 70,000. Soundtrack albums enjoyed 2018, and this was no exception. The soundtrack album For A Star Is Born by Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper enjoyed huge pure sales in the United States in 2018 and sold 704,000 pure albums in the US alone. Worldwide in December, the album also enjoyed success, but also barely outsold the Bohemian Rhapsody soundtrack with sales of 660,000 equivalent album units sold globally. This was the top-selling album based on equivalent sales worldwide for December, and for albums that released in 2018 was also the top-selling album in the United States based on pure sales, but overall was topped by 2017's The Greatest Showman soundtrack that sold 1,491,000 pure copies in the United States in 2018. Eminem's Kamikaze didn't make the top 10 of December, but based on its global sales in November, that was 206,000 equivalent album units sold. December figures showed stable sales with 197,000 equivalent album units sold in December. January sales projections already show that Kamikaze is likely to remain stable at around 180 to 210,000 equivalent album units sold globally, and at the rate, slow and steady will take Kamikaze a long way, and it will be interesting to see how much it will sell when it hits one full year on the market based on equivalent sales globally. In terms of pure sales, however, Kamikaze has already stomped the competition and ended 2018 as the third best-selling album overall based on pure sales at 493,000 albums sold. For albums that released in 2018 alone, it was the second best-selling album overall, only topped by A Star Is Born soundtrack. And in terms of hip-hop albums, Kamikaze ended 2018 as the top-selling hip-hop album of the year. In addition, Eminem ended 2018 as the artist that sold the most albums in the United States across all genres of music, which shows that his older albums are still selling up to this point. So there goes the argument that Eminem's music doesn't age well. Outside the top 10 of December 2018, a few notable hip-hop albums released, and global sales of these albums are as follows. Dummy Boy by 6ix9ine experienced sales increase in its second week globally from 89,000 in its first week to 121,000 equivalent album units sold in its second week, and sold 241,000 equivalent album units globally in the month of December. Lil Baby's Street Gossip opened with sales of 100,000 equivalent album units sold globally and ended December with sales of 199,000 equivalent album units sold globally, and didn't perform as well as his previous 2018 release Drip Harder with Gunna. 21 Savage latest album, I Am Greater Than I Was, only had 1 week of sales tracking in December and sold 169,000 equivalent album units globally on its release week. 131,000 of this figure was from the United States alone. KODAK Black's Dying to Live that released on the 14th of December opened with global first week sales of 105,000 equivalent album units sold, and 89,000 came from the United States alone, and in December the album sold 154,000 equivalent album units globally. Hoodie Season by A Boogie with the Hoodie also released in December 2018, but with just 1 week of sales tracking, the album opened with global first week sales of 105,000 equivalent album units sold, of which 90,000 came from the United States alone. So there you have it, a breakdown of album sales from December 2018, and I'll be adding additional sales figures at the end screen of this video for those of you who'd like to know more. And if you'd like to support the channel, consider donating to our PayPal at the link in the description. Thanks for watching, remember to subscribe if you haven't, and turn on notifications.